Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and I have a new mixer on my desk. So that's what I'm playing with down here with my hands. We are in the Sock and Jesus book because it bangs the most consistently and the hardest. It, as we say, sometimes it bangs so hard it will give your grandkids CTE. Very good, very good. Last time we were talking about a state of excellence that we might recognize in our culture as being in the zone, if you like sports, where you, other words for this, the ideal of the samurai. Often martial artists train for a state of being where they don't have to think about their movements. It's automatic, but not just automatic, it's appropriate for the situation. And in sports, they call it being in the zone or being on fire. And there are some famous stories from athletes who've gotten into that state in different ways. There's a classic one about a old pitcher who pitched a no-hitter while he was on acid. But last time we were talking about that state of being and how this is a consequence of a kind of learning that we are here to do. And we contrast it with the kind of learning we're often told we should do in schools, which is disappointing to us as human beings because it doesn't change our state of mind. It's just rote. It's training slaves. It's not training us how to think for ourselves, and well, it doesn't change our state of mind or our state of being. And that's what we want. You might know that a lot of people get disappointed after their first year of university because it's just the same old rote shit, and they expected something better. They expected to be treated like adults in a way where what they're learning is going to change their state of being, give them an insight into their own selves and their relationships that they care about the most, and change their state of mind. That's why we do things. We want to be in a better state of mind. Now, the ideal state of mind that we were talking about, we have been reading in the text, is related to something called justice. So we have been exploring this idea of justice. So, a kind of learning that does affect your state of being, that's related to justice. Those are the three ideas we're exploring currently. Now, we've also recently been addressing injustice, something that blocks learning. Punishment. That's it. Punishment. Punishment is injustice and it blocks learning. All you learn in punishment is to focus on other people so you don't get caught by them. Because some people, or people who do punishment, are sadists. They enjoy inflicting suffering because they associate that with a state they think is knowing. But it ain't knowing, it's sadistic. Also doesn't help you learn anything. It puts the soul in a state of suffering. Again, the exact opposite conditions for learning. And takes away your freedom. Again, opposite condition of learning. And it doesn't go through a process where you can uncover the root cause of the mistake you made. Again, opposite of learning. So punishment is injustice. Hey, welcome Sus. Thank you for the dancing mushrooms. Very cute. And thank you for the poem that you shared yesterday. That was a lot of fun. I shared it on the Discord. I hope you don't mind. I'll take it down if you do. In the sharing creations section of our Discord. The things associated that are used to justify punishment would also therefore be false and unjust. The idea of sin. You've made a mistake not because you have got something you've yet to learn, it's because you're a bad person and you should feel bad about yourself. And learning is, again, the opposite. What we're discovering, that true learning and true justice is discovering the nobility of the self. The state of self that transcends even being. or divinity. So you are instilling the exact opposite of the truth when you have ideas of sin. And of course, if the problem isn't because you've got something to learn, it's because you are innately evil, then what's the point of learning? Therefore, all you can do is kill the other team. So we see that with Republicans, with fascists, with Nazis, with crusaders, with religious crusaders, and religious genocides, etc. ad infinitum. If you don't recognize true justice and learning is a reflection on causes to learn about the nobility of the self, the intelligibility, the understandability of reality, if you don't recognize that, and instead you have some fairy tale about there being a evil monster in the sky called the devil, and you are of his nature because you're a sinner, then you have a justification for punishment, which is just a way of smuggling in the idea of violence that is needed to oppress others. So that's injustice. And we've been doing dialectics to recognize the nature of punishment, sin, retribution, hell, evil, injustice. So that when we say these things are bad and harmful, it's not an opinion, it's something we have nailed down through our own understanding. That's the dialectic. Equally so, we can do the dialectic on what is true. You have to do both for a complete understanding of the idea. So when we're exploring justice, you have to do a dialectic, which is only 4 parts, by the way, not hard, on what is true and what isn't true. So while that shows the implications of what isn't true, to show it leads to tyranny, oppressions, doesn't help, causes suffering, is irrational, these are the conclusions that show it is therefore false. But equally so, we have to do a dialectic on what justice is. If there is, and by the way, understanding are ifs. Ifs, they're hypotheses. You can confirm the hypotheses if you are doing it on things that do exist in reality. That's the transition from understanding to knowing. By the way, without that dialectic in your back pocket, you may have that brilliant light of being experience of your mind turning around and knowing itself and eternity without understanding what it is you're experiencing. So it's good to have the understanding and the dialectics you've been playing with in this game with us, the coolest people ever.
Do a poggers.
In your back pocket for when you encounter being. Everyone experiences it when they die, but hopefully you can experience it a whole bunch of times before you finally drop dead. So, what is justice? We've been doing dialectics on that too, which is just 4 steps of reasoning to show that it has to be the case. Now we've been exploring it. For there to be a justice in reality, another word for justice is fairness. We don't use the word, we use justice kind of a little litigious way, often in our culture, but a better word might be fairness. There is a cosmic fairness and balance in reality because this brilliant light of being that we experience is not different from yourself. The highest experience of beauty and bliss and knowingness isn't kept from you. That would be unfair. And as we've been reading, one of the reasons the soul incarnates into a body is after you die, you experience the brilliant light of being to some degree, to the apparently to the level, again, a hypothesis, to the level you can not withstand. What's the word? Let's find it in the book. To the level you can... To the level? Is level? You can withstand, or you can... After death. Let's try after death as our search term. Okay. To the level that you can... I'm struggling to find the word. You can withstand. Way of being, way of being. Okay, endure. I think it's the words endure, endure, endure. Here we go. All right, so the idea, the book begins early on saying one of the things that is the same about Socrates and Jesus is they both never left their own writings, and the task of presenting their work was left to people who cannot endure the profound nature of the pure light of being. So whether we are talking about Jesus' pure light experience written about in the Gospel of Mark, where he has afterwards he has a conversation with Elijah and Moses, I believe, which isn't written about, which tells us something. Or whether we are talking about, well, the brilliant light of being, Socrates talks about a lot, like heaps. Like primarily, the people following these people, Socrates and Jesus, who wrote about them, were not able to endure, or maybe even experience, full stop, the nature of reality, the pure light of being, that they are supposed to be writing about. And of course, we know that it's taken us 2,500 years to listen to the logos of Socrates because it's just taken us that long to have someone who is A, been able to experience and endure the brilliant light of being, and also B, has rediscovered and done the dialectic used to remove the false beliefs that human beings normally project onto things that prevent us from seeing what's there. So it's taken us 2,500 years to do midwifery and remove the false beliefs that block our seeing, and of course have a familiarity with the brilliant light of being to be able to talk about it and recognize what Socrates is talking about, such that we can understand what he's saying and recognize terrible translations from the actual real Greek. So, hooray for Dr. Grimes for being that person. So, equally so, upon death, all experience the most brilliant light of being. To the degree one is able to endure that divine luminosity, to that very degree there is a corresponding profound depth or shallowness in one's way of being. In that encounter, they realized that what blocked them from a more profound experience was their own fear that they would be extinguished in that awesome and powerful presence of luminosity. So those two things go together: the removal of your false beliefs about self, as well as your ability to endure the brilliant light of pure consciousness. Why? Because that false belief is the thing that you are afraid of extinguishing. Because you will extinguish it to a degree. Of course, it's still going to be there, unfortunately, because the pathologos is stronger than even enlightenment. Many people have had that luminosity experience, but their pathologos, the use of the dialectic to remove your beliefs is a different kind of a thing. Now, the brilliant light of being can have the effect of reducing the power your false image of yourself has over you temporarily. It's hard to think of yourself as a bad noodle and a small bean when you've just experienced yourself as the greatest bean and the best noodle, as eternity and reality. But of course, you will go back to your problems because you still have the primary work to do to surface those false beliefs about the self and remove them. So, they go hand in hand. The fear of losing yourself in that profound experience prevents you from having that profound experience. Which is ironic considering A, you don't die, and B, you would wish that you could lose that thing that you're afraid of losing, because that identification with yourself is false. It's a false belief that you're afraid of losing. And we have, here we go. Why? The pathologos cannot stand the light of the logos. So that thing that you're afraid of losing yourself by losing is the pathologos that can't stand the light of the logos. And the brilliant light of being is the light of the logos. Experienced all at once. We experience the light of the logos step by step through understanding. That's the dialectic. That's what we experience in time. And that's the learning we're here to do. And that's justice, because everything that we have seen about justice requires a learning, and injustice prevents learning, punishment, devil, sin. So what we're here to do, our purpose, our justice, our learning, our excellence, that also has an effect on our way of being, bringing us into that state of being in the zone or being the ideal samurai or whatever word you want to call it, are all the same thing. It is the dialectic.
Do-a-poggers.
So we do a poggers because of that. Which is a thing that means you're really cool, that they say on Twitch. So when Emma says that we're doing poggers, she's saying we are totes cool. And 2 thumbs up should do something to my camera. Where is it? How about 2 of these? There we go, some confetti. The pathologos cannot stand the light of the logos, which means that if we apply the dialectic understanding through time in that learning to the pathologos, we have the possibility of solving our problems. That's a kind of justice. And if that blocks us from being able to experience and endure divine luminosity, which is the logos, which means it is intelligence, and it's required to act in a good way, because if you don't know what the idea of the good is, you could be doing your best to do good, but actually hurting people. Think of the Crusades. Their idea of good is torturing people until they decide to love Jesus in their heart. Bullshit like that. For all of the energy they put into doing that, they had no idea of the good. Think of modern politicians. Think of clergy. No idea of... The idea of the good is another way of talking about the divine luminosity. Idea has a capital I because we want to distinguish idea as something that is intelligible or able to be apprehended directly from the materialist or Aristotelian idea of idea, which is a concept. It's not an abstract thought. It's a thing that exists. The idea, capital I, of the good. Sometimes you can use the word eidos, which is the Greek word for it. So what? So, the pathologos is something that blocks us from our intelligence, the good needed to care for people, so our goodness and intelligence and knowing ourselves. But it's also the cause of our problems. Because we have problems in our life that repeat but are understandable, because as we read here, the pathologos is a rational structure that has its own logic. So the fact that we have understandable repeating problems that can be solved is a kind of justice. Why? Because if we didn't have blocks that would be that repeat and force us to address the problem we are born to address, we could skirt through life and have all the ups and all of the success, and at the end of the life you've never addressed your false belief about the self that you were here to address and the reason you were incarnated. And you'll say to your friends, hang on a second, I did really well, I had the greatest success, and at no point was there a need to address my false belief. I completely wasted my life. That's unjust. But if you are blocked from excellence because of your false beliefs causing your problems, you are being given by reality what you need to not ignore it. Same thing applies with dreams. They call them nightmares. Nightmares. Hey, pay attention. That's a problem. So, what are we doing? We are seeing justice functioning on multiple levels. We're seeing that there is a justice in that brilliant light of being that you encounter when you die is actually the self. It's not unfairly different from you. In fact, along with addressing the false beliefs of self, recognizing that the understanding that and recognizing and experiencing the brilliant light of being as yourself is the reason for our reincarnation. In the book. Let's see it in the book. Let's see it here. The after-death experience we all encounter is the divine luminous light of divine being. Beautiful, real, radiating goodness. Here we go. Inspired by that mystery, they seek to find it in themselves and what they do. So not only is it ourselves, it can also be the model of justice and beauty that we use in everything we do. So this becomes the source of our urge to try again with another birth to catch that golden ring. So, in seeing that, we can link heaven and earth and life and death together and one journey. So we often talk about our politicians. They have no model. They have no model for justice. Here's the model. Religious people, they have no model for the divine. Here's the model. So instead they just defend their own beliefs, which is why they cause harm. Because belief is bad and understanding is good. Just that simple. Now the human reaction to that, who has not read the book that we've been reading the way we've been reading it accurately, will say, well, yes, I accept that for sexist beliefs and racist beliefs and cultish beliefs and apocalyptic beliefs that bring the world to an end so the divine one comes back, but not my beliefs. That's the issue. That's the issue. we all think our personal beliefs from our mummy and daddy are the best ones, which is a family curse. That's the name in mythology. Achilles didn't think at the beginning of the book, when he was a bad person, didn't think he had to follow the rules or seek excellence because he was a half god. His family was chosen by the gods. Everyone thinks that, which is fucking stupid, but that's our level of development. It's stupid, but it's the power of belief. So, to come back and catch the ring, to see the brilliant light of being in ourselves and what we do. So that requires two things. You have to understand it so that you understand it yourself, and you also need to understand it to recognize it as the model for justice and beauty in everything you do. So there's the dialectic applied to the truth. That's called metaphysics. Personifying the aspects of metaphysics with stories is mythology and theology, if you make them gods. It's not literal. Not literal people doing tea parties on clouds in the sky. But, as we just read, the pathologos and cannot endure the light of the logos. So if you haven't, and also we fear losing ourselves in that experience, but it's the self that we're losing is the pathologos self. Meaning, so long as you haven't done the dialectic to remove what's false, you're not going to be able to do that other part. Understand it and integrate it. So once again, we're seeing that in order to see the brilliant light of being in ourselves, hey, first spam of the day. In order to see the brilliant light of being as yourself, you have to move the mouse cord so you can write on your drawing pad. Over there. You have to understand the truth, and you have to remove what's false about the self. To see the brilliant light of being is a reflection of the self. And of course, the one art to do that is the dialectic. So once again, the single purpose of reality of our incarnation and the meaning of life is a dialectic. Hooray! The meaning of life again. Which is the structure of learning. Learning the truth and learning to remove what's false. So therefore, a learning is required, and which is that learning is the dialectic. So that's a justice. It's fair. Now, we were just doing a reflection on the fact that if we didn't have what we need in our life to address which is of the truth of self and the false image and belief. Make it a different color. This one. The false image or mask or ego is another word for it. Image and belief of self. Okay, if we didn't have what we need to address this, in other words, problem, we could just go on our merry way and have everything that we always wanted. At the end of our life, you go, hey, did you do that thing you were born to do? What was that? Remove the false image of yourself that prevented you from being able to endure in the greatest depth the brilliant light of being, and recognize it as yourself. Recognize it as an aspect of yourself within yourself, but still a reflection of yourself, so you can understand and know yourself through that reflection on your way back to the self, which is even higher than that. No, I didn't do that. What?
Where's the passion, dude? Where's the... Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting.
The more holes, the better. They're completely lying to you. They're completely lying.
Completely lying. Your life was a lie. Your life was...
It's sad. And I'm sad for you.
It was sad for you. Because, so therefore, the fact that we have problems that repeat and are solvable and are understandable, so that we are forced to, well, we're not forced to, we always have a choice. We have the conditions to, so long as we wake up to our purpose, address our false belief, is another kind of justice. To see your problems are just expressions of your soul's experiences and lifetimes. Oh, yes. Also, not only does it reflect your problems solvable, but they reflect a series of experiences. So there is a just or fairness in the accumulation of experiences or events. Without that, then your lifetime that you lived would just be suffering or a waste of time at best. So the fact that we do have a learning, or we are that one of those peas that you see on your plate that have the divots that reflect all of the forces on that pea up until this point. So you are a perfect reflection of all of the forces of your soul and your soul's development. That's a kind of fairness or justice. To see that they are a gift is the next level, the one we were just talking about. A gift in that they are a gift to, because they are solvable, because they reflect what your soul needs to see and have accumulated over many lifetimes in its learning and nurture, either of what's false or what's true, and is solvable, makes them a gift. But again, you'll only see that if you do the dialectic, because the dialectic is the following of the logos. The rational structure of problems is a reflection of the logos. So once again, you need the dialectic. To see your problems are expressions of your... Right, and the reasoning that we've been going through in the dialectic of what's true in this book is what we needed to come to this conclusion. That we play out the effects of our lives, not in some punishment in hell. No, we followed the dialectic in the book that showed that punishment is injustice. Therefore, that if it's injustice in our physical world, it definitely can't be a realm of higher. Also, we've done a dialectic to say, hey, being is the idea of the good. Therefore, can't be evil. They're opposites. Well, one is fake. So to see that where we do play out the implications in a just way is in our next reincarnation, and we can see it in our current world. Many people are born into places where they suffer injustice from other human beings. And also, we see that when we come into our lives that we all have different ways of interpreting the origin scene. So every pathologos is unique. So in other words, To see the justice of multiple lifetimes required the dialectic that we followed in the text, or the dialectic of the true. To see that we can solve problems required the dialectic of the false. That's that third thing. The third level of justice, to see problems are a gift. And of course we have to, as we read in the text a second ago, to see in this pink here, inspired by the majesty of the brilliant light of being, we seek to find it in ourselves and in what we do. So that fourth level of justice, to open the gift and solve your problems, to verify that you can grow, to verify you can escape the cycle of reincarnation, to verify the first one, that the brilliant light of being is the reflection of yourself in mind, requires you to do it. Apply the dialectic to not just what's true, not just what's false, but also dreams. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of justice that exists cosmically within all levels of reality, exist within the multiple lifetimes of your souls and its reincarnation, exist within the principle of problems themselves, and exist within your own particular problem and your ability to solve it and to see your problems as a gift. Every single one of them requires a kind of learning of the dialectic, and of course the learning and nurture, or the learning and practice. And it's the learning and practice that we can take with us. It's the learning and nurture of the soul that we can take with us through our multiple lifetimes. Nurture. So, 4 levels of justice that we can see. We could only see it with the dialectic, and they all require a learning. So, every one of them is a learning. Learning to see the brilliant light of being as yourself. Learning to see the implications of multiple reincarnations. Learning to about problems themselves, and learning how to solve your own problems. They all require learning. And it's only learning one thing, applied to 2 fundamental things: the truth of the self and the false about the self. So we're learning about the self in 2 kinds of ways. Now we've got many ways of talking about these 2 things: the understanding excellence, understanding pseudo-excellence, and removing pseudo-excellence, perfection and purification, escaping fate and reaching justice, destiny, your highest purpose. Justice and removing injustice. The true and the false. Philosophy and midwifery. But again, one thing. So once again, for the millionth time, we have, by practicing the dialectic, we have been learning, and what we've been learning is that very thing we're doing is the meaning of life. Because at every level, you require the learning and application of the dialectic. So, once again, the meaning of life. Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Making ice cream's a good and courageous thing.
Right. So you can represent the learning of the dialectic as a kind of making ice cream. You're making something that's good. And as Emma from the Majority Report says, it's a good and courageous thing. So we tip our cups to all of you in this game. Is that neat? Isn't it neat? Isn't it? I think it's neat. I think it's really neat. So here to learn the dialectic, and that allows you to see justice and remove injustice, as we've done by addressing the root beliefs and injustice of hell, devil, sin, etc. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Also, what we've seen is not only is it the meaning of life, it's the kind of learning different to rote learning. Use rote to memorize your fractions or your times tables or repeat your bullshit economics. I did economics at university. It was fucking horseshit. Supply and demand will always meet. There is an invisible hand that means everyone is going to be fair. Fuck off. Lies. The guy who made up the idea of invisible hand, Adam Smith, recanted that that's not, no, it's not, no. I was wrong, and you are wrong. Your understanding of me is wrong. But the billionaires and the trillionaires who play out their beliefs use their money to avoid their problems, avoid the meaning of life, to continue their injustice on themselves that will play out in this life on other people and on themselves and in their next life, and having terrible reincarnations until they fucking wake up. Using money to avoid problems and justice, that's trillionaires and billionaires. That's what capitalism affords. Chose to ignore the logos of Adam Smith saying, hey, that invisible hand stuff, garbage. There isn't some magical, godlike being making everything fair so long as you seek only to maximize your personal profits. And we know that because war is profitable to some people. Not cleaning up after yourself if you're a big oil company and poisoning the water supply is profitable. Making shit things that break so people planned obsolescence, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on materials and so it will break and people will keep buying from you, is profitable. Having a solely profit motive is fucking terrible. Obviously. Like we didn't have to think. We did like 10 different or like 5 different reasons why capitalism is disgustingly bad and harmful to all life in the space of a minute. So why are we so irrational? Because the false images and beliefs of the self that we get from childhood. Imagine what happens if you grow up rich. Well, no, you don't have to imagine. Listen to the Palantir guy talk. Listen to Musk talk. Listen to Bezos talk. Listen to Trump talk. Listen to Netanyahu talk. Listen to people. I don't know if Netanyahu grew up in wealth, but he's certainly become comfortable with it. Listen to these people who grew up with wealth and privilege talk about the world. They're just reflecting their problems on others. Hey, you could solve world hunger, but you choose to do the opposite. Interesting. Like there's no intelligibility or care in your behavior. Therefore, not doing your job. Learn the dialectic, remove the false image of self. So, this is the kind of learning, unlike what we have been talking about, that does affect your state of mind. We got that last time. While good and bad behavior may indeed have their consequences after death, they need to be balanced with an obvious way of learning. So it's not just a justice that you get cause and effect kind of punishment in a sense, not punishment really, but you do have to experience the negative implications of your functioning in your reincarnation, but that's not justice. That's just cause and effect. You also need an obvious way of learning. So what we just said, obvious. It's obvious that you can solve problems. It's obvious that capitalism is bad. It's obvious. It's obvious if you open your eyes and have a look to the people who support capitalism that they are always the wealthy and they're always sadistic. And they grew up in their family teaching them those beliefs. Therefore, it's obvious that problems are caused by belief and solved by understanding. Therefore, justice isn't just that we get to see the brilliant lying of being is ourselves, that we can have an effect through multiple incarnations because of the way that we've lived, as a result of the way we've lived, that we can solve problems and benefit from doing so. It requires the learning as well. Learning is necessary for justice, always. And the obvious learning is the dialectic. Tell your friends. Hey, there's the meaning of life right here. And it's obvious. It's needed. Hey, you like fairness? You like justice? Justice requires two things: the balance cosmically at every level, individual souls, many lifetimes, the principle of problems themselves, and the principle of reality itself, 4 cosmic levels, but also not only balance, but a learning so that you can traverse through that balance in a way that benefits your soul. Right? Necessarily? What do you say?
The primary purpose of pools is not to murder. It is for enjoyment and cooling off.
Exactly. Emma means by pools, the balanced nature of cause and effect through souls and our functioning. And it's not to murder you, it's not injustice, it's to cool off. The cooling off, I think this is what Emma means. She can be quite cryptic. Is this. To, as the Oracle says,
Imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
change our positions and improve for the better. Learning. So, not only balance, but learning. By the way, you can't see the balance unless you practice the dialectic or do that thing you do the learning too. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Win-win. So, have I mentioned this book bangs? This book bangs! Everything we've been saying is from the book. Imagine that. Understanding the root cause of injustice in our world. Not just our world, but any time in the world, at any place in the world, any galaxy in the world, and probably, and in multiple dimensions in any universe. Isn't that interesting? That we can learn that from this book? And not only learn about the root causes of injustice to address that, but we're learning about what justice is. Balance and learning. Oh my God. Again, anyone, anytime, any place. You don't have to be a member of a group. You don't have to promise to give your heart to Jeebus or Allah or Joseph Smith or Xenu. You don't have to promise never to watch Harry Potter. Because it's the devil in magic. You don't have to murder children for profits. It's everyone. You just learning. It's for fun. It is not just for fun, but it is fun. It's a...
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the child?
Wow. Well, you're doing your best. Okay, go ahead, man. Here we go. And I find that very entertaining.
See? It's entertaining and it's got childlike whimsy, dude. It's a win-win. Ha! Here is where I make the comment about how, because the book is so great, that's why I have so many Twitch followers. And I have 50,000 Twitch followers and viewers like Asmongold and Hassan Piker. But I don't.
Freaks.
They're freaks.
that's anti-feminist in some way.
Yeah, I agree. It's anti-feminist in some way. I don't have all of those followers. Not for me, because the book's worth reading and can do these great things. Hooray. Hooray, hooray. And again, no opinions here. This is just what follows rationally, beautifully, and necessarily. While it applies to particular people, none of the elements in the dialectics we use are from opinions or people. It's not a physical thing. These are all ideas. In a high sense, not a concept. The aspects of reality and thought itself. In other words, we're looking at whole and parts, same and different. But intelligibility also requires us to use the other aspects. Oh, by the way, these are all aspects of being, the logos. So we're using concepts like, not concepts, ideas. The brilliant light of being itself. That's not an opinion. That's consciousness. That's a level of dimension of reality that you can experience. And you do when you die. Self. Problems. As an idea, as a principle. Justice. Soul. Growth. True and false. Development, which is analogy, by the way. Learning. Nurture and learning. See? It's not an opinion. It's not, and then Moses said unto Elijah, there will be a sheep for the masses, but no goats, for goats are the smelliest of animals. If you dare lick a goat, you must throw 10 sparrows into the east wind, and then Jesus will forgive you. But you must wash your clothes and lie. None of that. None of that. Zero. It's understanding, not belief. That's why I can have 50,000 of Hassan's followers who like understanding, and 50,000 of Asmongold's followers who like belief and hating understanding. That's how they're bound together. And both can join in, because this isn't a matter of belief. You can still, well, it's not about beliefs. You don't have to be on the team. And if you love understanding, well, this is understanding itself. Therefore, true justice would be me having 100,000 Twitch and YouTube viewers. Is that justice?
They're secretly turned on by it.
I see. Are they, Emma? All 100,000? That sounds a bit dodgy.
Don't be disgusting. Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting, Emma. All right. So, balance between consequences and kind of learning we need to do, which is to know how to avoid the one and gain the other. It wouldn't be a just if you couldn't avoid the bad and the consequences of the bad and gain the good. So you had to learn. Where do we do that learning? Well, mankind is born to learn. Right? I mean, I've heard of born to run, but born to learn? I've heard born in the USA, but born to learn? And to fulfill our destiny, highest purpose and reason for existing, and highest excellence. That's what that would mean. Learning what is good as well as the highest good is primary. So we can... Oh, I'm on the wrong page. See? Good in particular has a little g, and good itself as an aspect of being, capital G. Or top G. No, don't use that. No, that's a reference to some very, very ignorant, belief-based image manipulator. Sexist piece of garbage. Forget about that. Only good times here. Okay. Capital G. So learning what is good. So learning about the benefit of our individual soul and society, as well as the highest good. So the model of the good, the model of goodness and justice and beauty and stuff. The logos itself is primary. You don't want to spend your life trying to do good, but actually doing harm. Punishment and rewards follow mankind in the afterworld or the house of Hades. Now, we're developing a new hypothesis of what house of Hades means, considering there's no such thing as hell. But there is a playing out of the consequences of justice and injustice in Earth. Interesting. However, only an earthly form of learning can provide the rich insights into justice. Justice needs to be known in the particular and acted upon. It is from these early learning events that the soul comes to an idea of justice. Once these ideas are unified, the soul of each has a justification for their way of being and defines its relations with their fellow men. So, to balance the cause and effect, we need a learning. The learning is about justice. It can only happen through time. So again, if it can only happen here, it is an argument to show that if learning can only happen here, therefore, it's likely the purpose for our being here. If you can only scallop oysters with an oyster scalloper, it's likely that the purpose of that oyster scalloper is to scallop oysters. Pretty good argument, but super, super good when we have all the other ones, all the other arguments or dialectics that have shown time and time again the meaning of life is learning. Now, the issue is we come to a idea of justice from our early events, early learning events, which causes our injustice, of course. So we experience an insult against ourselves, our mind, and our understanding when we are in a good state of being, because that state of being or state of mind is taboo for the family, because that would require the family to learn and think and reflect and incorporate a higher way of being that they don't want to do because they're trapped in their bullshit beliefs, images, and disgusting injustice. Every family, but not yours. Okay, every family. So that injustice we take as justice. So again, the family way of being that surrounds that. So the way that your way of being was mocked when you were doing things for yourself or stepping out of that family way of being, mocked and scolded, and threats of exile or even death can follow if you follow the logos and your purpose in the family. That's the injustice that you either say, hey, that's unjust, which is the final stages of philosophical midwifery. That's unjust. It's not just. It's not fair. Wrong and bad. And you're imitating someone. What happened to you? Where'd you get the shit from? Who are you copying? That's not you. But until we do that, we take that injustice as justice. So, famously, fascists claim everyone else as being fascist to them, and then there's that meme that we looked at last time. Well, if you're so mean to me, I'm just going to be a Nazi then. Does that make you happy? And the guy's shaving his head and getting a Nazi tattoo. No! You called me a Nazi. Well, I'm just going to be a Nazi then. Right? I did that thing where people say, right. Look here. They also say, look here. So once those ideas are unified from those early experiences, those early learning events, therefore that injustice becomes justice or justified. Therefore, this way of being, doing unto others the injustice I suffered, becomes their way of being and defines the relations with their fellow men. So we talk a lot about a healthy relationship, or a good relationship would be one that is just. And as we've seen, justice requires learning and addressing the false image and belief of self. And we can include, from what we just read, and justice too. So a healthy relationship would be one that encourages reflection on what is your way of being, or what are the aspects of your way of being that reflects the injustice that you suffered, and how is it related to a belief from your family, and how does it become your ego or mask, so that you don't spend your life and relationships solidifying that, getting more entrenched in that, and then having a reincarnation where you suffer the consequences of that. That's a loving relationship. Why? Love and logos. Always.
Wow. Wow. Ow. 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 Ow.
Wow. Which is a learning that you both had to do anyway. And that love part is not only a caring kind of a love, but also in the true sense culminates in the experience of pure beauty. So it's also a positive loving in the sense of desiring pure beauty. Not just pure beauty, but to completely join with beauty. Not just to completely join with beauty, but forever. Eternity. Which is that? It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
So, taking on the human form is the very condition for learning, and what the soul learns. The soul is what learns, but its need for the body is not fully understood. And so, we've already covered that the stages of learning have a corresponding feeling in the body. Again, showing that we're here to learn, because we can only learn here. But also, in the highest sense, there is a unity of body and soul that is possible through learning. Because in learning, the form of the thing learned becomes transparently your own. So as we've been reading, you might have found yourself just automatically thinking within the structure of the dialectic. We've been doing the dialectic so much that's becoming automatic. You start by defining something. Oh yeah, it's this. And then when you want to think about it or you want to explain it, go, oh, okay, here's an example. Definition, demonstration. But then you really want to understand it, so you break it down into its implications of that functioning, of that demonstration. Well, how would it play out here and here and here? Oh, interesting. And that would conclude what? In a good way? Beautiful and necessary? Or in a bad way? Contradictions and harm and hypocrisy? Oh, interesting. Therefore, I can synthesize that division together into a conclusion that I can analyze back to that first definition. Definition, demonstration, division, synthesis and analysis, which is the conclusion. So you might find yourself just thinking and seeing through that automatically because it's becoming your own. Which is neat because remember,
They're secretly turned on by it.
Are you secretly turned on by what we saw before? And so it becomes your own. All learning music. By the way, I was going to play music yesterday, but I had to do more engineering to get it to work through the computer. So hopefully I'll be doing some streaming of music soon. Join the Discord and you'll get a notification when we go live. Music, mathematics. Oh, and maybe later on the channel we can get into mathematics too, because Euclid's elements of geometry it's one of the greatest examples of the dialectic applied to something other than what we apply it to. It's mini dialectics going all the way through, building from scratch the entirety of geometry. It's a complete system. As complete as you get, because there are some premises or axioms that we have to borrow from philosophy to play the game. But it's neat, so we could do that in our channel once we get those 100,000 viewers that we talked about. Or language, that's one that you've got already. It's yours, you see through it, you don't have to think about it. Becomes your own, once truly learned. It can bring the soul to act without having to recall what you learned. Once learned, it's possible to act spontaneously through your language. You're just walking along and you see a giant spider and you go, ah, fuck. You didn't have to think about what word to use. It was spontaneous. Also music and mathematics and dialectic. It is an openness, a wonderful freedom to act without thinking, and yet the state of freedom makes possible acts that are totally appropriate to one's circumstance. So now we're talking about the highest excellence or being in the zone. The ideal of the samurai, or the ideal of the basketball player, doing all of the three-pointers and then saying...
They're secretly turned on by it.
Getting the audience secretly turned on by how many three-pointers that you have. Was that a good example, Emma?
Is this chat full of dumb cunts? It's sad. And I'm sad for you.
Much of human learning is by rote and does not achieve this inner state of mind. So we want to achieve the inner state of mind. Hooray. That's a loss if that's all that's offered. It is this union of body and the soul into what is a complete being that makes the human being. So we're becoming a unity. It is no different from the informing principle that brings a unity to the different parts and organs of your body into a single being. So you have parts in your body that function together in a single, all doing its part towards a greater whole, giving rise to a greater whole. So a singular purpose that you can have your whole body focused on. While each thing is doing its part, it all has a singular focus to create the health of the body. And when it comes into a unity, it gives rise to a greater dimension, cognition, or consciousness. So it gives rise to a greater whole. And we say the more holes, the better, don't we?
Bless you. I'm too pure. The primary purpose, that one's perfect. Making ice creams and duopoggers. They're secretly turned. The primary purpose, I'm cute. The more holes, the better.
Got there. I need a better system. The more holes, the better. Giving rise to a greater whole that we can then use that greater whole to fulfill our even higher purpose, which is this. So the parts doing their function with a singular goal or focus. So we're seeing no kings protests in society right now. All these people with their different signs, singing their own different songs, doing their own different marches and their own different outfits. Not much unity is there. Whereas if there's a baker and a architect and a grocer and a petrol store attendant there, they could all do their specific function, but if they had a single primary unity function to never ever give any of their life energy to benefit Nazis and fascists, they would. The grocer wouldn't sell them groceries. The fuel guy wouldn't pump their fuel. The electricity guy wouldn't give them their electricity. They could all do their individual part in service of the health of the whole, because fascism is a cancer of the society. So we could all be unified, which is, of course, something that is talked about by Gene Sharp in his book From Dictatorship to Democracy. So we could all have wear the same colors. So there's a much greater unity within an orchestra, for example, where everyone has their own parts but have a singular focus on a single piece of music and a single conductor, and they can give rise to great beauty. Now we can up that even higher instead of just chanting in the street, which doesn't seem to do much, does it? Better than nothing, but we can do better. So similarly, in our body, each part has its singular function, but together with a shared unity and focus to the health of the body, giving rise to a greater whole, consciousness. Now you can go out and achieve your goals. Similarly, if we put an end to belief-based religion and politics, and instead be bound by understanding, which is universal and always benefits and can solve problems and can reach excellence, we could have everyone doing their parts in service of the Logos, providing a great freedom and health, allowing a human race now free and capable, because we're functioning at a greater whole, to reach a higher level of excellence. And that's one of the questions in the book. Man has its destiny. Man has its higher purpose. Mankind. Mankind is born to learn and fulfill our destiny. We can only function, like if you've got a broken arm and you've got cancer in your body, you can't function to fulfill your purpose. Equally so, society or mankind. So, what we are seeing now is nightmares or problems. We are seeing and experiencing through our bodies, through time, the implication of a society and race governed by beliefs which are bad, and not learning understanding, which is the literal purpose of life. What happens if you ignore your purpose and don't learn? Fascism, Nazism, slavery, capitalism, the destruction of life. We are experiencing it. Those are the problems. Just simple. You're seeing what happens if you're bound by belief. That's it. And one of the things is you're blocked from learning and you're blocked from your highest excellence. So once you've got a healthy body, free of cancer, you can write that book you want to write, or whatever, reach your higher goal. Mankind has a goal to play within the universe, has an end that it's seeking to reach, that we can only reach if we address the same principle. False beliefs imitate truth and are the cause of problems. Understanding apprehends truth and is the cause of our healing of problems and excellence. That's the principle we learn. That's the dialectic. So, and for us individually, this kind of learning, giving rise to a greater whole, because our parts of our body can function together, the thing that we are now free to do is this learning. You can have a healthy body and go around kicking puppies. That's not fulfilling your destiny. If you have that unity of the parts of your body, giving rise to a greater whole of consciousness, thought, reason, the highest use is the use of that reason to reason about reason itself, or master reason itself. That's the dialectic. It's this kind of learning that can achieve a greater state of mind, being in the zone, a kind of justice within yourself or of yourself and your functioning, most fair and balanced or appropriate to the circumstance. So the idea of justice also plays out within your own state of being, with this state of mind. Just as the parts and organs of the body come to a single being. The turning about to discover what learning is. See, what did we just say? What are you going to use your consciousness for? To do 3-pointers? To kick puppies? Nope. To discover learning itself. To discover the dialectic. To discover justice. So this learning and dialectic has a result on your state of mind, what's the words in the text? Inner state of mind can achieve an inner state zoom in a bit. Inner state of mind that we can call excellence. We can call it the zone for fun, which is a kind of justice. So to see justice operating at all the levels requires a kind of learning. That learning is the justice itself. Not only is it the seeing of it, it's the thing that allows you to participate in justice. And if you do it, the dialectic you learn to see it and do it also has an effect on your inner state of mind and puts you into a state of being that we call being in the zone, which is a state of excellence. Or, sorry, a state of justice. Oops. Yeah. So, justice requires learning that gives rise to justice. Isn't that neat? So long as we're learning about what learning is, which we're doing here. Okay, so seeing a lot about justice. And then Jesus goes on to say, hey, let's tell us about the conversations you had with the other guys in heaven that you've been talking with Socrates. And then we talked about music. How Socrates' skill of the dialectic can bring discussions into a sharp focus. So it's that. So there's a kind of functioning automatically through the skill that benefits discussions. Unlike the horse shit debates and bullshit media that we see currently, where politicians waffle while they continue to bomb and exploit people. Oh, but this is a weird question. Let's have a tangent. No, we need a skill of the dialectic for every person interviewing as a journalist, and every politician, of course, should be acting in a just way. Orpheus had music which gave him a power even over the house of Hades. So that's significant for us, because not only are we here to master the logos, but address the pathologos. So we could say this is the logos, or pseudo-excellence, or injustice. There are many, many words we've got that talk about this duality. And pathologos. Now, the more rational, like we're talking about Hassan and Asmongold. Asmongold's followers are bound by pathologos. They're Nazis and fascists and groypers and all that sort of crap. They can't do anything. They can only copy catchphrases. They can't think for themselves or do anything creative. What they can do is bind together in hatred of the logos. Hassan is trying to share. Hassan Piker is I stream on Twitch, so these are the two biggest content, I think two of the biggest content creators on the platform. He tries to share understanding. Therefore, all of the Asmongold are people bound by ignorance and belief that can only do harm, direct it or project all of their pathologos problems and injustice onto Hassan, who represents for them understanding or the logos, because the logos threatens the pathologos. In a good way, it's supposed to. In the same way, medicine threatens cancer. So what? Well, so we do the logos, but even more. We understand. We're doing the logos on the logos. We're doing understanding of the logos itself. So as a philosopher, we challenge everyone's way of being. Famously, Pierre Grimes said once in the 60s, he met the Black Panthers who were fighting, who were challenging the racist white Americans' ignorance about black people being less than human and irrational, and so they were hated by white Americans, black Americans. And Pierre met with them and said, hey, by the way, yes, you're hated. By the way, Trump. We have not addressed the root pathologos that is the source of this racism. Still present. We have to do our jobs better, folks. Anyway, Pierre said, hey, you challenge their way of being, but at least you have each other. I'm a philosopher. I challenge everyone's way of being because I challenge ignorance itself, belief itself. And I got no one on my team. At least you guys have each other. You think you're the most hated group in America right now. I'm the most hated group. And there's only one of me. So, this is important to recognize. Thankfully, the guy had extreme courage and character. And so, a war hero against the Nazis when he was 17. Fucking amazing. And in his platoons, he had like many captains or whatever you call it, leaders of the trip who were fucking stupid. So they would punish him as a young soldier for his courage and intelligence, because that's what happens in the army. That's what happens in any system where people who don't have the logos and don't know the dialectic mistake their pathologos, violence and oppression and sadism, as knowing, and functions only to crush the good people. In spite of that, him and his unit had changed, I think, 3 to 5 major battles against the Nazis that helped us defeat Hitler. So, very, very amazing person. Yeah. Again, we faced Nazis and fascism and communism. The next in line is capitalism, which is nothing other than false belief that by inflicting the most injustice for personal profit, somehow it's good. That's it. There's no hidden secret agenda with capitalism. It's the fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits, feed as many children and trees into the child crushing machine and the environment crushing machine to make the numbers go up for the quarter. Right? So what? Well, so, Orpheus had a kind of music that gave him power even over the House of Hades. What's the House of Hades? Where the Pathologos plays out. The reincarnations in which you play out the consequences of living a life where you have not removed your pathologos, and therefore you've spent your life doing injustice because of your pathologos. the House of Hades. We can, again, solve problems by the learning of the logos, the dialectic. So, we can do the greatest benefit, as Pierre has done, but we're also going to suffer the shit like that movie Inception. All of the dream characters notice there's someone different in the dream, Leonardo DiCaprio as the Inception dream dude, and then as soon as they notice, they all turn on him, and then they start chasing him. Kill the guy, kill the guy, kill the guy. But he's trying to help them, I guess. Same thing, Pierre's trying to help everyone. Again, took us 2,500 years for us to get a Pierre Grimes. Wrote this book, by the way, that we're reading. But yeah, hate it. To be fair, if you go on, there's a website where students can rate teachers. Well, there are, I think it's like 50% of people saying, this guy's dumb. He's my worst teacher. There's also a large percentage of, there is still a, I don't know if it's 50%, but there is still a huge number of people saying, this is the teacher that's changed my life. The only teacher who's been able to use reason or affect me positively. So, it's not all bad. But yeah, so in participating in the logos, we are going to be a challenge to other people's injustice, making us a target, which is important because Orpheus had a music which gave him power even in the House of Hades, populated by ghosts and zombies. That's the House of Hades. Earth. At this current stage of Earth. Populated by ghosts and zombies playing out the implications of their ghost belief of the pathologos. Orpheus added much to our talks, and so did his son Musaeus. The most profound of seers. We talked about seers, oracles, sometimes on this stream. We talked about oracles last time with our friend in chat who talked about tarot cards. And the prophet who declared that justice was the daughter of Zeus. What does that represent? If Zeus is the self, is this excellence within ourselves that we talk about, that state of samurai, internal justice, causing our just functioning, is that the offspring of the state of self or Zeus? When Homer and Hesiod joined us, they were able to join our voices in a chorus of song and in praise of truth and wisdom. Hooray.
The more holes, the better.
The more holes, the better. So that's where we are. Let's keep reading. Okay, keep reading. So, Jesus. Do share with me the divinely inspired reflections your group engaged in. Sorry. We often return to these core beliefs that most often block access to that unity of ideas. What does Socrates spend his time talking about? The core beliefs that block access to the unity of ideas. What have we been talking about in our reflection? We are here to learn about the brilliant light of being, which is the unity of all ideas, the logos. Therefore, we have to learn about it. That's the dialectic. But we also have to address the false beliefs that block it. And it seems that Socrates spends more of his time, or at least he keeps returning to with these people, the core beliefs that block access to the unity of ideas. The two principal ideas that were that there is a ruling god or divinity of the afterworld, and it is this god who passes judgment over the souls of the dead and assigns rewards and punishments. Our discussions turned on this question: what idea of God is consistent with the nature of punishment and what is not? Ooh.
That one's perfect. perfect and exactly the case.
Ah. From what we have said, it seems there is only one conclusion. I am cautious about coming to it, even though my mind has already announced its presence. See?
There's only two options. The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
So even though he is reasoning himself into a position, being bound by belief, our buddy Jesus here is hesitant. In other words, he may be carrying a belief that blocks understanding, just as Socrates talks about beliefs that block the unity of understanding being. See how the logos of understanding and the logos of the brilliant light of being are intertwined and connected. Isn't it interesting? Here is a chicken that will always agree with me. Is it interesting, chicken? Yep. These two are the most essential and fundamental ideas that are linked to other ideas, forming a closed system of ideas that brings to birth the ideal of justice. What two ideas? Two principal ideas: a ruling God or divinity of the afterworld, and it is this God who passes judgment over the souls and assigns rewards and punishment. Closed system of justice. Do as you're told or you get a spanking.
I'm cute. Like, it's
Wait.
you've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
Success! On my random soundboard button. Randomizer. So, two are the most essential ideas. So if we want to address true justice or the false core beliefs that block access to being, we should address these two most essential and fundamental ideas: a ruling divinity of the afterworld who passes judgment and assigns rewards and punishment, because they are linked to other ideas, forming a closed system of ideas that brings to birth the ideal of justice. Then take me along that discussion on punishment. And then it's 12:30. Need to check something. It's the wrong day anyway. Doesn't matter. Take me along that discussion on punishment, and then tell me about what you have come to about the nature of God. Ooh. Good idea there, Jesus. We will have to take a few steps that Museos took me through. Museos was leading the dialectic. I'll frame the questions just as he did. The dialectic is repeatable. And you, in turn, answer them as you like. Even though it's repeatable through a structure that you can memorize and use, it still accounts for freedom of the other person's answers. Interesting. Sounds like a good thing to learn, maybe. Answer them as you like, Jesus. However, I should say that when I entered the talks, I started in my usual way that I can easily review. I started by asking if we could explore what differences there are between making mistakes, doing something incorrectly, being wrong about something, and sin. making mistakes, doing something incorrectly, so you don't know that you're making a mistake, being wrong about something, and of course, the sinister idea of sin. Fuck you. So, starts in his usual way that he can review, so we should review it. What's he doing? Identifying the key terms. And he wants to know what is the differences. So, what's the whole? Justice. Whole and part. What are the fundamental parts? He sees them as making mistakes, doing something incorrectly, being wrong, and sin. Now, what's his next thing? Now you've got whole and part, same and different. So not only does the dialectic have the structure, that four-part structure that we've looked at a lot often, that should be on the board more than it is. Surely. Yeah. Not only does the dialectic have this four-part structure, within the structure of the conversation, it also includes the parts that you can use. And we've been... Here we go. One, many, whole, part, same, different, like, unlike, limit, limitless, or free. One and many stands atop, but there seems to be 6 primary pairs, but then there are a few more as well that you can mix in there. So, remember the ones, this is a skill tree, by the way. The skill tree of what it means to be a true mystic or a philosopher or a sage. We want to go from savage to sage, from zombie to mystic. Okay, look for questions, develop hypotheses through the structure of the dialectic, play with analogies, but also skill trees. So I've got a bunch of ones of the self-logos terms: beauty, justice, goodness, excellence. Keep them. A bunch of 2s. Whole, part, same, different. See? We want to see them and recognize them so we can make them our own and function through them automatically like the samurai. So you could say we're going from zombie to samurai. I'm looking for a term. Savage to sage works nice. But maybe samurai, because the ideal of the samurai is what we saw as the internal justice of that state of being that you get through this kind of learning. Described for a samurai, it's to act without any thinking or planning, with the full force of your being, most appropriate to the circumstance. So, zombie to samurai, does that work? So we've got some pairs up on the board, whole and part. Now so Socrates is using them. Whole and parts, same and different. Just like in the opening of this book, our author used them, or Socrates used them. Hey, if we're going to talk about what's the difference between Socrates and Jesus, says Socrates to Jesus, we need someone who can count for the whole of our work and also recognize the parts. And then we better talk about how we're the same. For instance, today we talked about they both didn't write anything down and left it for people to talk about what they said, people who weren't themselves able to endure the brilliant light of being, which also implies they haven't addressed their false beliefs that prevent the experience of the brilliant light of being, meaning they are going to be zombies. In other words, they have the parasite that forces them to project their beliefs onto their teaching, meaning we don't have Socrates' teachings until we do now, and we don't have Jesus' teachings. We have Paul's teachings and Mark's teachings and John, not Jesus. We have Plato and Aristotle, not Socrates. So that's how they're the same. And then they went on to describe their differences, and that's the big one, because Jesus represents belief and Socrates represents understanding. Belief causes problems, understanding solves problems. Therefore, the purpose of life is to move from belief to understanding, which happens through the dialectic, which you can only learn here in the body. So therefore, learning the dialectic is the meaning of life. So we see it playing out within the structure of the book, and also how Socrates organizes his conversations all the time. And of course, the self-logos, because we have analogies which talk about the lesser is to the greater. There's also three terminologies where Diotima, the oracle master of the Logos who taught Socrates, and then Socrates teaches us, making us, through the mean term of Socrates, equal to Diotima as a sage. So, lesser, greater, and equal. It's a self-logos three-term. We've got a dialectic, we've got a four-term with definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. That's a 4. So, skill trees. Look for these groups, because that makes you...
I'm looking. You're a wizard, Harry.
Makes you a wizard, Harry. You're all wizards, Harrys, if you play this game. Okay. That's how Sock started. Now, I like that way of going, says Jesus. I'd say we are off to a good beginning. Yes, I started with a few simple questions. Is it true that to help someone who made mistakes in geometry... Oh, by the way, before we read on, can we use our hypothesis we've been developing of one to many to principle to you? One example, 2 or more examples to a principle, and then apply it to the specific thing we care about the most? For instance, I think today we talked about, hey, is a racist beliefs bad? Ask your friend over coffee. Cheers. I said coffee. That means I had some of the coffee. I'll drink off the coffee. Is racist beliefs bad? Why? And they will give some sort of answer like, oh, because we understand it to be bad. Evidence shows us it's bad. Logic shows it's bad. The principle that skin pigmentation affects consciousness is stupid. Something pointing to understanding. And you might even say, oh, okay, let's take the opposite. It's not because Jesus, even if Jesus said it, it wouldn't be right. Now, don't pick their own one. So, I'm more likely to run to a Christian around these here parts. So even if Buddha said it something racist, it would be wrong. Even if Xenu from Scientology said it, even if Joseph Smith from Mormonism said it. So, one example. Give another example. Hey, racist and sexist beliefs. Therefore, as a principle, can we say all beliefs? Now, there are scientific beliefs that are based on evidence and reason, which is a kind of a different category, but still can play out harmfully because we can make nuclear weapons without an understanding of the good and how to use them. Also, experiments can involve torturing human beings or animals rather than looking to the logos. But as a principle, believing of someone else, false beliefs or beliefs, Therefore, your particular belief. Once you've got it as a principle, we apply it to your own ones. So your beliefs in whatever they believe in, harmful or bad, or we must jettison in favor of understanding. So that would save scientific belief, wouldn't it? Because understanding applied to the material world, you could say evidence and reason, sure, but only as a way of getting to a principle, which transcends the physical world. So we want to go past materialism and Aristotle. So let's see if we're going to go through that now. It's fun to carry a question as you read. I started. Who did? Sorry. I started with a few simple questions. Is it true that to help someone who made a mistake in geometry, one example, you would first have to understand it for yourself? Then I asked, before offering some teaching to overcome the error, would you first need to grasp what kind of mistake or error was being made? So understand the... Well, can we use our self-logos pairs to understand this? Whole. Understand it as a whole. Can you recognize a part that doesn't fit the whole? Did the student make a mistake because he was evil? You've been in one of those math classes where you look around your math class and there's a guy doing his math equation and he's cackling to himself. I'm going to give an evil answer to this equation. They'll never suspect. 15. This is so evil. The cosine is a cosine instead of a... I don't know. I've forgotten. Trigonometry. Cosine. Sine wave. Cosine wave. What's the other one? I don't know. I'm writing cosine instead of the sine wave. Oh, I'm so evil. Have you been in a math class like that? So, because he was evil? Or because he failed to apply some, here we go, principle. Failed to apply a principle. Again, scientific beliefs are still in that class of beliefs, so long as they don't raise to the level of principles. Should we be, as a principle, digging deep into the earth to bring to the surface the most dangerous radioactive rocks, just so we can boil water when we could have, I don't know, solar energy, or wave energy, or wind energy? No, we shouldn't, because radioactive materials, as a principle, should be left under the fucking ground. But I want to make profits. It's hard for someone to make a nuclear power plant, so I can corner the market and make profits. I don't care if everyone gets sick. I must make profits, says the capitalist. So, let's keep going. That's a reference to that dialect we mentioned about belief versus understanding. Understanding requires principles. Okay. Was it an evil, cackling geometry student with horns, giving 15 instead of 17? Or was he just failing to apply a principle? Is your idea of evil restricted to moral problems? Okay. If so, it lacks scope. So he's gone quickly from one example. He skipped 2 examples to the principle. The principle being this idea of evil, which is fucking terrible. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm editorializing. I'll stop doing that. This idea of evil can only be applied to moral problems as a principle. Therefore, as the conclusion step. So, Geometry, we could do another one. Hey, someone in a chemistry class, someone, I don't know, building a sandcastle. Did his sandcastle fall over because he was evil? Or because he failed to apply the principle that you need to put water into the sand to make the walls a bit stronger? Therefore, as a principle, evil does not apply to learning anything else. It only applies to moral judgments or moral problems. Therefore, the conclusion, either back to self or conclusion. This is the significance of having our skill trees. Because look, let's do a whole another thing up here. Stages, you could call it stages. Stages of dialectic in conversation. Why not? Have a coffee. So I have an excuse to have some more coffee. Cheers. Sip, sip, sip. Conversation. So we've said, okay, give one example. Give many examples. Come to unify to a principle. Come to a principle. That you apply to relevant topic or instance. Topic or instance. Okay. And so we looked at that and we said, hang on a second, there's 4 there, so we can put it in our 4 skill tree. But we've already got another 4 in our skill tree. Definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. Does it fit? Doesn't on the surface. But here's the thing about skill trees. By rubbing the 2 skill trees together, so in a video game you have a skill tree where you've got an ice magic skill, and now you've got a electric fire magic skill, and if you put them together you get thunder or lightning. Lightning storm. That's even more powerful. Similarly, we can say, hang on a second, one example. Yeah, I guess that's a kind of a definition, I suppose. Many examples, yes. Demonstration, that's what demonstration means. Principle. How is division a principle? I don't see it. Here's another. Definition is the subject in relation to itself. Demonstration is how that thing you've defined functions to others, self to others. Principle is how that functioning applies to others. And from that you can have a conclusion, which is you take this as a synthesized idea, like you pick an idea that incorporates all of the divisions or explains all the divisions or has scope over all the divisions. You take it back to the original idea. This kind of fits conclusion. Apply it to the relevant thing you're talking about. That makes sense. I can see that. But how does division relate to principle? This is the point. This is the point. This is the game. This is the play. This is the fun and the whimsy, dude.
Where's the joy? Where's the childlike?
Because actually, if you go through the division, what are you doing? You're looking at the functioning, how it applies to this example, and then plays out, or this example, or many examples, many divisions. But from seeing how the functioning plays out in a particular instance, seeing how that plays out, or seeing how many others play out, in order to go to the conclusion, you have to find within there an idea that unifies it. What's an idea that unifies all of the instances, all of the divisions? Principle. The division step, therefore, is to allow you to arrive at a principle. So now we've got a new insight into how to do this third step of the dialectic. We've upgraded our understanding of division. It's not just how this functioning applies in many different examples. We see the purpose is to arrive to a principle that applies to all of the examples, or repeats through the examples, or has scope over those examples, because we take that principle to the conclusion where we now apply that principle back to the start, other, back to self. This is the significance of playing the game this way. Isn't that neat? Socrates went from one example to geometry, skipped the many examples, and said, hey, as a principle, the idea of evil can only apply to moral things. Therefore, we apply it to our relevant instant, therefore it lacks scope. As an idea to explain justice. But we've seen that he's missed steps. He missed the many example steps. He could have gone, hey, this applies to not just geometry, but sandcastle building. And maybe even a third one if you wanted to. And in division, you can play it out in two ways. How does it apply to if it is? So let's say you do have an evil child doing geometry, or an evil child doing a sandcastle, and see how that's an absurdity, so that can't be right. And also if it isn't. If it's not an evil thing. So what are they doing? Oh, they just don't know that they've got to put water on the sandcastle. They're failing to apply the principle. He skipped that step, I guess because it's obvious, at least to the people he was talking to. Therefore, he took this. It's a failure to apply principles. It's not something that can be applied to anything other than moral things. Therefore, the conclusion is it lacks scope. Isn't that neat? We're able to follow what he did, but also the missing parts. Why does that matter? If you were to correct someone who's made a mistake, do you have to understand it themselves? Did we just show an understanding of conversation, of learning, of dialectic? Not only do you have to grasp it as a whole, but you have to grasp what kind of mistake was made in the past. Therefore, by seeing the whole of what Socrates was doing, we could see the mistake he was making in the past. Although it wasn't a mistake, it was just a missing part because it was obvious. So we could correct Socrates' dialectic if it was a mistake, but it wasn't, because we know the whole and the parts, which is the very thing he said is needed to teach a kid how to do geometry. But then we can do a division. What's the opposite? Let's say you weren't someone who knows the whole of good and bad and recognizes problems of parts, but you still want to feel like a big, strong knower. You want to still get the praise or the money from being the person standing up in front of the church and getting all the attention from others. So you don't know the whole of humanity or the whole of the soul or the whole of the idea of the good. You don't recognize the deviations of the parts. False beliefs. So what do? Oh, it's evil. What does every preacher, minister, politician who's ignorant and fucking stupid and wants to pretend to be wise do? Oh, it's evil. Antifa are evil. The left are evil. The blacks are evil. The foreigners are evil. Let's set up ICE to get rid of the evil criminals who are brown. Let's genocide the evil Palestinians. Literally, they're fucking saying that. They are people who don't know shit about how to teach geometry, who are using the word evil or sin, or variations of it, to pretend to be the knower, to sit in daddy or mummy's chair, or play the role of preacher or king. Literally, we've had a No Kings movement protest this week, yesterday. That's king and clergy. People who don't need an understanding of the whole and the parts, but can pretend. And what do they always say? Everything I agree with is good and Jesus. Everything that I don't like is bad and evil. Imitating justice. Vice and injustice is the imitation of justice and virtue. Belief is imitation of actual wisdom, which you get through understanding. Palestine will be free. Hey, welcome. Thanks for dropping in a comment. Exactly. And if someone was to ask you why that would be the case, you wouldn't say, oh, because I believe it, or Jeebus said so, or Xenu said so. You'd be able to give an understanding that all human beings have value and a self and a mind. All human beings have the same human needs. And an understanding of justice, which is to facilitate the meeting of all human needs equally. You don't have to believe anyone. That's always going to be true because it's based on understanding. Not a belief in evil. Yeah, so that's the game. Belief is the imitation of understanding of the parts in the whole. Now, understanding itself is this. Dialect. Meaning that we could make an argument for anything, any idea, whether it's free Palestine or end capitalist tyranny or end pollution of the environment or any of these things. Because it's the structure of the whole of thinking itself. All we got to do is go through this, and once we have it, because it's true, it's repeatable. It's always going to be the case that people should be free. It's always going to be the case that slavery is bad and shouldn't happen. And it's always going to be the case that evil does not apply to anything other than morality, and even then it's probably going to be bad. We're going to see that soon. Morality has no scope as a principle. Evil as an idea. So, the idea of evil is restricted to moral problems, and if so, it lacks general scope. Jesus says, no, not punishment, only teaching would help overcome mistakes and errors in geometry and sandcastles. If mistakes and errors are correctable by gaining a better... What is it? Understanding.
Making ice cream is a good and courageous thing.
Yes, ice cream and understanding are good and courageous things. If mistakes and errors are correctable by gaining a better understanding or knowledge of the subject, then does sin fall into this class of correctable things? In other words, if someone has an idea of sin or evil, actually no. there's two ways of going here. So the answer to that is no. Evil is a variation of, sin is a variation of evil. You don't have a problem because you have not yet seen the principle, or you're failing to apply that principle. No, you're just evil in nature. That's sin, original sin. You're a bad monkey.
A space wizard farted out the universe. All humans are inbred from a single pair of humans, not once but twice. If you're a naughty person, you get tortured eternally in a pool of lava by a vindictive genocidal deity who loves you.
Because you're a sinner. Now, the other thing that I was thinking about that was, if you have the idea of evil, or you have the idea of sin, should you be tortured to death? As Trump does to people he calls evil, or Netanyahu does to people he calls evil, or etc., etc. No. That's what we're doing here. We are learning and doing and demonstrating. We are defining and demonstrating the thing that would actually be applied to people who have this disgusting, terrible, dangerous idea of evil and sin. We don't torture them to death like they do. We go through learning. We go through the dialectic. We go through this very conversation here to help them see through understanding that their idea is wrong. They are in error. They've made a mistake. No need for guns, so we can just stop making guns now. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? If mistakes and errors are correctable by gaining a better understanding or knowledge of the subject, then does sin fall in this class of correctable things? Interesting question you have here. You are asking if the failure of understanding gives birth to sin. Yes. Does the failure of understanding of what is right and lawful bring about the need for instruction, as we are doing here, or for punishment, as the most cruel, disgusting fascists of our planet are employing now? Which is it? Are we here to learn? Or are we here to suffer? Do we live in a just world with learning, or are we here to damage our souls and the souls of others through torture because of sin and evil? Jesus responds, "In my youth, I heard it drummed into my ears that punishment should follow when learning fails." Yes, you and me both, brother. Fuck those people. When one knows better and does the worse, there is a failure of will and learning. So yeah, it's your own problem of will. You should have known better, says every fucking sadist. For all the screaming aloud of this refrain, I have seen in each person's sin a flaw that is correctable by listening to the voice of the divine. Please continue. So even Jesus has seen that you don't hurt people. But his solution is listen to God. We would say the nature of God is the Logos. The way that you listen to the Logos is through understanding. Because the divine light of being is the Logos experienced all at once. Understanding is it step by step through time, which requires a skill, which is learning. These are the steps. I have heard similar things. In our discussion, a turn in our talk occurred when Orpheus stressed that to view punishment in the extreme, we need to enter that dreadful house of Hades. While we were reflecting on his remark, Musasios, the mustached one, urged that before all else we must consider the demands of justice, since it alone will force upon us the need to seek truth. To seek the truth we so sorely need to see. Okay, so for punishment, to view punishment, we need an idea of torturing our souls. Imagine telling that to a child. fucking sick.
We definitely are not born with a starter kit of beliefs, buddy. Religion is shoved into children's brains forcibly through indoctrination, and if it's any kind of fundamentalism, it's essentially child abuse. Even if a kid was to come to this conclusion totally out of their own accord, that there is a divine entity that created everything, it sure as fuck wouldn't be the malicious sociopathic god that you assholes worship.
So that malicious sociopathic idea of divinity is hell. So before we reflect on this, we have to consider the demands of justice. The demands of justice, because that will force us to seek the truth. So it's our soul's yearning for justice, for truth, for fairness that is what motivates us to solve problems, to seek justice, whether it be against fascist Trumps and the march against kings that happened, whether it be what we're doing here, addressing the root cause of that fascism by seeing that it's fundamental false beliefs, including these two fundamental ones, a punishing God that judges and punishes, so we can end all fascism and have a better place to live. So that desire to do that is our soul seeking truth, which is justice. What are the demands of justice, Socrates? I haven't heard that phrase used before. So I just gave a hypothetical. I'm just guessing. That was just a guess. The demand of justice? Is it our soul seeking truth? Is that what justice is? Like, we want to make things fair. We want to see there's a fairness and balance in life. What are the demands of justice? Why go through these steps? Why learn and practice them? One example, many examples, principles applied to a relevant instance. Why do we care to see that there is? Why do we care? From last time. What can we do? We can look at things and look for things. That's all. What's the best place to look, and what's the best place to look for? Do we look at beliefs? Do we look at itself? Do we look for a projection of our injustice? Do we look for the logos? So why do we care about seeing that the brilliant light of being is our self and we can function with it? That may be the cause of our incarnation completely. Why do we want to see that our problems reflect a justice from all of the lives we've lived, such that if you live a life of injustice by not doing the dialectic, you will pay the consequences in the next life and beyond? Why do we want to see that actually problems are not here to torture us, but as a gift for our growth? Why do we want to learn the dialectic to open those gifts? In other words, the seeking of this justice and verifying it as true, not just make-em-ups or beliefs. Is that a demand of justice? What in our soul demands us to do this? And why is the demand of justice what seeks us to truth and to learn the very thing we're here to learn? What's it meant by the demand of justice, Socrates? On that cliffhanger, let's explore that next time. Wow, we've covered a lot about justice and how it functions at many levels, but all levels imply learning, and that learning is the dialectic. And we looked at how we can do it in our own conversations and also see it in the book and in Socrates. We are also taking this definition of what justice is and what it isn't, and seeing it demonstrated in the conversation Socrates had with Mustachio and Orifice and Mustache. Orpheus and Musaeus, who I like to call affectionately not Orpheus and Musaeus, but Orifice and Mustache. It's affection. So, again, definition and demonstration. We're looking at it everywhere. Why does that matter? Because if we can look at it everywhere and at every part and whole, we are learning to see through it. Not only are we learning it and nurturing it into our soul, which is what we're here to do, which will affect our reincarnations either positively if we do it or negatively if we don't, but it's the kind of learning that can change our state of mind and state of being to the samurai state, the flow state, the excellent state, which is itself a state of self-justice. Our soul seeking justice requires us to see that not only is there a balance of cause and effect, but there has to be a learning so you can have the good thing and avoid the bad. So therefore, to see justice requires us to learn the dialectic to see it so we can define this as justice and evil and sin not. So to see justice, we require the dialectic. When we do see it, we see that justice requires the dialectic for that learning. And that means that we can see it everywhere, and what we are seeking and what we find when we seek, meaning it's a single activity we can focus on that can give a unity to all of the parts of our life, our psyche, our soul. Unify our body and soul together in a single purpose, the same way all of the parts of your body unify together, giving rise to a greater whole and a new way of being. If all the parts are coming together in that single purpose for the health of the body, can give rise to consciousness, which is a higher dimensional functioning, which you can use that consciousness to seek even higher goals. So too, by seeing that our drive to justice requires the dialectic, and the definition of justice is the dialectic, therefore we have a single purpose that we can direct our time, our attention, our life, our soul and body to at all times, the learning and nurturing of the dialectic. And in the book, it said, hey, if you do that, that single, great, meaningful purpose that you can unify your soul and body towards gives rise to a higher state of mind, a higher dimensional functioning we call being in the zone, or inner justice, or the ideal of the samurai. Isn't that neat? In the seeking and seeing of justice, but also we learn to see through it, we make it our own, just like for musicians or math, but more easily to see in language. You just see through your language. You don't have to think about it. You can use the appropriate words like this.
That's anti-feminist in some way.
Right? You can see things are anti-feminist in some way. And if they are, you say,
That's weird that you think that.
that it's weird that you think that, having language. But the dialectic is something similar we can see through, but it's the kind of learning we're not only here for, but it can elevate our soul to that higher level of whole, a higher cognitive functioning, which can allow us to reach higher goals, just like the body example. And ultimately, it seems that the goals are to see the divine being, light of being as ourself, and to function through it, but as the daughter of Zeus, as we saw in the text. In other words, the self, to know the self, to know its expression as the brilliant light of being, and to function through that in that state of excellence / justice. That's the higher cognition. That's the higher level of wholes that you can get only with this learning, in part because it's a single activity that we're doing the whole time that can unify the parts to a greater whole. Neat. So we've taken our former ideas of justice that we've been developing along the way, these four here, purifying our false ideas of justice from our false core beliefs. That's what we're doing now, particular evil and sin. But we've also given birth to a new idea of justice, an inner state of mind that we all want because it kicks ass. In other words, it's a, like always, it's a
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win.
win. We always be winning here. Thank you so much for joining me. Twitch and YouTube, if you want to follow and subscribe and join the chat. That helps actually. If I get enough Twitch viewers, I can become affiliate, which is helpful for some bunch of things. If you want to support the channel, there's a link below. I greatly appreciate it. There's a link to the text below. And if you want to join the Discord, you can share your work, your thoughts, maybe meet up with others to practice the dialectic, but also you get a notification when we go live. And also, I'm going to be streaming music soon. So I'm going to be posting when I am able to get online and stream music. So we can chat and listen to music and talk philosophy, which is interesting because it's through music that Orifice, it was Orifice whose music gave him power even over the House of Hades. Mustachio said that justice is the daughter, the offspring of Self or Zeus. So, speaking of music, if you join the Discord, I'll give you a notification when my music goes live. Hopefully today. Thanks once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.